probably the most notes I've ever had for a video that's not Wheel of Time related. So I've mentioned casually on my channel that Alexander the Great is pretty much the biggest, most undisputed badass in history, and I'm just going to go point by point and prove that that's just kind of factually true in this video. No one can match his feats. So starting at the beginning, Alexander the Great was the son of King Philip of Macedon, a small city-state in the northern region of Greece. His father, realizing the badassery of his son from even birth, probably realized he should hire a good tutor, so he hired literally Aristotle to come in and tutor his son from a very young age. Yes, the lineage of the ancient great philosophers goes Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Alexander the Great, which already that's enough to make him a notable figure in history if you're tutored by one of the greatest minds of the ancient world. But continuing on from there, at age 18, Alexander the Great led his first battle. While you were still in high school worrying whether or not you're going to pass-fail a test, Alexander the Great was leading men to battle, and winning, and winning, and winning, and winning, and winning. At the age of 18, Alexander the Great led his father's cavalry against the sacred band of Thebes and crushed them utterly. And this was not a know-nothing group. They were well known to be nothing to mess with.
WoT Clan ain't nothing to with.
And Alexander the Great, as a teenager, smacked them down so hard they probably met Hades.
Name is Hades, Lord of the Dead. Hi, how you doing?
Right away, he has a bit of a reputation. Continuing on 2 years later, his father is assassinated. Now he's a 20-year-old who is the king of a city-state in northern Greece. Neighboring city-states hear of his father's death and think, there's just some young scared 20-year-old in charge. We could probably take his land. Nope!
Never. Not in a million years. Absolutely not. No way, Jose. No chance, Lance. Yet, negatory. Nah.
Some barbarians from the north come down and try to mess with his city-state, plundering and trying to just do generally barbarian-y things. Alexander the Great took his father's armies north and literally wiped the Thracians and Illyrians, I don't know how to pronounce that, from the earth. He used scorched earth tactics against the people. In the south, the Thebians and Athenians were giving trouble, so he then took his armies down there and surrounded their city so quickly the Theban government hadn't even decided on a plan of action to actually deal with Alexander the Great yet. That's essentially like Canada declaring war on Mexico, and before the Mexican government can acknowledge their declaration of war, the Canadian army has surrounded Mexico City. So being the brilliant tacticians they are, the Theban government sent their soldiers out from the city to meet the Macedonian army in the battlefield. Alexander the Great crushed their army, went into the city, killed every government official, and sold the entire populace into slavery, because you really do not want to piss off Alexander the Great, and they seemingly did that.
Then I ask again, what is the virtue of a proportional response?
It isn't virtuous, Mr. President. It's all there is, sir.
It is not all there is.
Pardon me, Mr. President. Just what else is there?
The disproportional response. Let the word ring forth from this time and this place, gentlemen. You kill an American, any American, we don't come back with a proportional response. We come back with total disaster.
The Athenians, hearing of this really decisive, incredible victory from Alexander the Great, just surrendered. Just kind of went, you know what? No, we're good. We saw what you did. We're sorry we messed with you. We're done. We're out. We're good. And the Athenians, as you know, are not anything to mess with. They were one of the largest, most well-established city-states within ancient Greece. While they weren't at their peak at this time, it's still impressive they just surrendered. And within the next couple of years, Alexander the Great, for the first time in history, successfully unified Greece under his rule and cementing himself as an emperor. And that was not enough for him. His ego was the size of a god's, so what is he gonna do next? Alexander the Great is pretty much a demigod walking among us, and no demigod would be satisfied with one peninsula. But there had been one empire that had been messing with Greece for far too long. The Persian Empire, as you're probably well aware of, was one of Greece's largest rivals for decades. The Battle of Macedon, 300, all these things were the Persian Empire trying to conquer the peninsula and failing. Well, Alexander the Great was kind of sick of that, and he wanted to go for the first time on the offensive and kick down the Persian front door. Before going off to do this, like any good Greek boy, he consulted the Oracle of Delphi, who told him, "My son, you are invincible," certainly not helping the young ruler's ego and setting him off for one of the most badass conquering conquests of all time. Alexander the Great very quickly conquered a large swath of Asia Minor and started attacking directly into the Persian heartland. These were actually ethnically Greek areas for the most part, but he rapidly left that and went into Persian-held Persian homeland and began dominating. Next up, he landed in the city of Gordium, which is the home of the famous Gordian knot, a knot that was considered completely and utterly untiable, and there was a prophecy surrounding this knot. There was a prophecy around this knot where the man who successfully untied it was destined to be the greatest king in history. So Alexander the Great took the rope and just cut it open. Just didn't untie it, just cut it open and went, look, I win. I beat your prophecy. Alexander the Great then proceeded to have many devastating victories against the Persian Empire, not only crushing many battles where he was facing 2-to-1 odds against him, but many of the famous Persian generals fled from him or were captured and killed, seizing many more Persian cities. One of the most notable bits of this conquest was when he went down to Egypt, successfully liberated it from the Persians, and the Egyptians were so impressed by his military feats and the nobility of this man, they heralded him as a pharaoh, which essentially means he's a god among men, and built a temple in his honor. Even though he was a foreigner, they did not know. That is impressive. Landing in a place you're not known and making such an impact, they're just like, that's a god. Build a temple. Build a temple.
Doing something mean to it. Do it better than anybody you ever seen do it.
Within a few years of liberating Egypt, Alexander the Great continued on to cities like Babylon and the Persian capital, solidifying himself as the Great King. That's what he called himself, the Great King. And not many people could argue with him. And now when he was just about my age, he was officially the ruler of Greece, Egypt, and Persia, the three most wealthy and powerful areas in the known world. Was he satiated? No. Alexander the Great started hearing about the insane wealth out in India, and so he decided, I want to conquer from Persia all the way to India, and guess what? He did it, and he didn't only do it, he never lost. That's right, he conquered the entire known world at the time for Greece, anything that had been explored or even traded with, at least to the east of Greece, and did it without losing. And when he conquered cities, he'd often set up governments that were more fair to the people, increase education and literacy, and in general, the people he conquered after a little bit of time liked what he did, and so he just became this amazing ruler who had such a reputation. Often generals would just surrender before fighting him, and when he finally started heading back towards Greece from India, he found there was some corruption in the governments he set up, so he started executing the people he put there because they were not doing a good enough job for the people. So if you weren't already really impressed by his conquering and military feats, often winning battles that were heavily stacked against him, he was also a man of the people who, if he found corruption, he would purge it. He also built the Library of Alexandria, which of course, before it was burned, was pretty much the center of knowledge in the ancient world. Still one of the most horrendous losses the ancient world ever saw. He did all of this without losing a battle and forged one of the largest and most impactful empires in all of history. And if all of this was not impressive enough, he even has a mysterious death to just cement him as, oh my god, this guy deserves a movie that doesn't star Colin Farrell. Why would you cast him? Why? He's Irish.
Who is this great king who pays assassins and gold coins to murder my father?
As he was heading home, a sickness struck Alexander the Great. It has been theorized this was anything from something similar to malaria to poisoning. And the most powerful man in the known world did die from a sickness. Very, very few military leaders can boast that they have never lost, and none on the level of conquest and number of battles of Alexander the Great. His body's whereabouts are unknown. It did move around for a little bit more in the Egypt area, but it was lost to history, and it's been theorized that a couple bodies of saints might actually be the bodies of Alexander the Great, but once again, we are not sure. A recent excavation certainly points to this might actually be Alexander the Great's body, but once again, we are not sure. This was just such a brief overview. There's so many more incredible stories from this guy's life. If you conquer from Macedonia to the border of India without losing, there's going to be countless incredible stories, and I recommend you look them up yourself. He understood not only tactics, but the psychology of breaking down your opponents. Truly an incredible historical figure. Anyway, I hope you guys like this video. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. And have a good one, y'all. Peace!